Good afternoon. Today is Monday, May 4, and we're going over the fourth of 5 skills that make up Test 2. So we're nearly done with this particular group, and we will be done with it this week. I plan to have the 5th skill out tomorrow, and then you have until Friday to get all 5 skills completed. I will be looking to average those scores at the end of the week on Friday. So here you'll be able to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve problems involving the lengths of sides of a right triangle. So you've worked this rule before. It's been around a long time. You've done it in middle school. I also worked it for a semester. So the theorem goes as follows. In a right triangle, the square of the sides of the triangle equal the square of the third side, which we call the hypotenuse. So, and that is where A and B are the lengths of the sides of the triangle, and C is the length of the hypotenuse. And I'll show you a drawing of that in a moment. So the Pythagorean formula is based on the A, B, and C sides and is C squared equals A squared plus B squared. So this is the formula that we're going to be using to solve in this particular skill set. All right, so today is probably one of those days when you may want to use the graphing side of your piece of paper that's enclosed in plastic. And that's simply because you're going to be drawing right triangles. Sketch them out, use your erasable pen, and then you can erase it, of course, with a scrap of cloth of some kind. All right, so here's our first example, example 1. You're going to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of A, where B equals 32 and C equals 68. And in this case, if you look at the drawing, you'll see that B here is, which doesn't have a letter on it, but A it does, so this must be B. Those are the two sides. It's 32 miles, so we're dealing in miles here. So you might want to make a note of that, miles. And then the C is your hypotenuse. It's 68 miles. And if you notice, across from the hypotenuse, there's always the right angle of the triangle. So that's the way you can always make sure you know what's the hypotenuse. You look across from the right angle and you've got the hypotenuse. So what is the length of the missing leg? That's what we're going to cover. All right, so I'm going to go change pages, and we're just going to look at the formula. So this is the formula that we found and used from the previous page. Again, C squared equals A squared plus B squared. I turned it around and just changed it to A squared plus B squared equals C squared. This is common. You will see your C either on one side of the equation or the other. And I'm just doing this deliberately to keep you on your toes and familiar with that kind of situation. All right. So now what we're going to do is, we know that A is the unknown. So we're going to leave A as A squared. So our B has to be, the only thing it can be is the 32, because C is always the hypotenuse, and that's the 68. So I'm going to replace B with 32, and that's what I've done here. And then I'm going to replace C, the hypotenuse, with 68. And so that's what I've done here. And remember, these are going to be in miles, okay? All right, so you take your calculator. This is where you use it. 32 squared, that's your B. Let's just put it down here and we can work the numbers. So 32 squared, oops, got to turn it on first. Clear. 32 squared, I hit the square button there, hit enter, and I get 1024. So you'll notice here that I wrote in 1024. And then 68 squared is, as you can guess, 4,624, but let's just do it. So 68 and squared, and that's 4,624. So go ahead and square those and put the numbers in just like I have here. And now what you're going to do is you're going to find out what a squared, and to do that you're just going to subtract 1,024 from both sides. I didn't actually do it here, but when you do that you end up with 4,624 minus 1,024. That leaves you with 3,600. So a squared equals 3,600, and we've said it as I told you, we're subtracting 1,024 from both sides. All right, now you take the square root of both sides. Whenever you have a variable squared and you want to find out what the variable is, you must take its square root, and you have to do it to both sides. So square root of a squared, the square and the square root cancel each other out, and you're left with a. Now the square root of 3,600, I have here that it's 60. So if I take the square root of 3,600, so I want the square root this time. I'm going to go over here to my calculator. I'm going to click on the second button, and then I'm going to go to the x squared button again. And let's see, I think, yeah, let me move this up a little bit. Here's my x squared button. Well, if I click second first, which I did because the little arrow was showing, then when I clicked x squared, I get the square root sign. And so now I'm going to take the square root of 3,600, close the parentheses, hit enter, and I get 60. All right. So now you've got to remember something, though. People look at this. In fact, some of you are going to say this. Oh, wait a second, mister. You took the square root of both sides. Isn't that answer 60 going to be both positive and negative? Because 60 times 60 is 3,600. But also, if we were to take negative 60 times negative 60, we're going to get 3,600. So how come you don't show a negative? Shouldn't there be two? This is a quadratic problem. Answer is yes, if you're dealing with algebra. But with geometry, think about it. Do you ever get the length of a side that is a negative number? Answer, no. So think of this, if you will, as the absolute value of 60 is always going to be a positive number. Okay? So then the length of the missing leg, A, is 60 miles. Okay. I've got one more to go. And this one may throw a few people for the loop because it's, oh my God, it happens to be a word problem. Well, whenever you see word problems and they deal with directions, and they tell you to go north or south or east or west or left or right or up or down, they're giving you distances that are vertical and horizontal, and then the third distance is always going to be, you know, a hypotenuse, because a vertical and horizontal distance is a right angle. It's perpendicular. So let's look at this. Susie just went down a slide at a playground. Okay, well, slide looks like this, right? Oh, it's a triangle. Susie goes up the ladder. She slides down. She slides down the triangle. Okay, so she goes up the a ladder, and she walks 8 feet to get to the end of the slide, from the end of the slide to the ladder. So if she's going 8 feet from the end of the slide, here's the end of the slide, then she's going 8 feet from here to here. And then it says she climbed 6 feet to the top. So she's climbing 6 feet to the top. Well, since this is a ladder, that's a perpendicular angle. This is a triangle. So we know then we can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure out what this third side, which I'm going to call C now, is, the slide side. Okay? So all we're doing is we're going to take Again, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And in this case, either 6 or 8 can be a squared. It doesn't matter. These are legs. You can go one way or you can go the other. So I'm going to start out with 6 squared. So a is going to be 6 squared, plus b is going to be 8, so that's 8 squared, and that equals c squared. So substitute 6 for a and 8 for b, and then solve for c. So 6 squared, 6 times 6, if you aren't sure, take 6 and then go over here to this x squared button, which you can't see right at the moment. There it is, x squared. So I'm going to press that, and 6 squared is 36. So this becomes 36, and then 8 squared, do the same thing, go to 8 this time, and go to the x squared button, which is right down here. Hit enter, and you get 64. Now most of you can, in your head, figure out that 6 squared is 6 times 6 or 36, and 8 squared is 8 times 8 or 64. All right, so we want to know what c is, so we've got to add together 64 and 36. So 64 plus 36. And that answer is 100. Oh, that's an easy one. Okay, so 100 equals c squared. So now you take the square of both sides. So take square root, that is. Take the square root of both sides. So that means I'm going to take the square root of 100, and that's going to equal the square root of c squared. Now, if you can't remember what the square root of 100 is, go back, get your calculator here. And so I'm going to take 100, I'm going to type 100 down here, and I'm going to go up here to x squared. Oh, sorry, I want to take the square root of it. So let me go back, and behind the x squared button is the square root, so I have to hit the second button first. You see the little arrow up there tells me that it's activated. Then I click the x squared button, which is really now the square root button. There's the square root. And then I type in the 100. I close the parentheses, and you find out that the square root of 100 is 10. So there it is. 10 equals the square root of c squared, and remember the square root of c squared is really just c. So this is the square root. So we took the square root and we simplified. Now, remember, this is geometry. There are no negative lengths. So this stays as a positive answer. And that's your answer. So up here I would put 10 feet. Okay? All right, that's it. So you're going to get problems like both of these, and in some cases they will be challenging, but remember, use your calculator, write everything down, use your graph paper, and I urge you to draw your triangle before you do any problem solving. So particularly for this problem here, notice I drew the triangle so I could see what was going on. Okay? It makes it immensely easier. All right. You have a wonderful afternoon. We're done for today, and I will be in touch with you tomorrow with the last skill. Take care now. Bye-bye.